Are you ready to improve your balance? It's Charlie Merrill with Merrill Performance. Thanks to a special request from my mom, today we're going to talk about some of the finer points and really interesting concepts with regard to the incredible phenomenon we all know as balance. So I got a call from my mom, who's in her late 70s, the other day, saying that she talked to her doctor because she'd been tripping as she's been hiking and going for walks with her friends, catching her toe and just tripping, and her doctor encouraged her to work on balance. And so wanted her to go see a physical therapist, and of course, because that's what I do for a living, she called me and said, "Hey son, can you make me a video to help me work on balance?" And I said, sure. Like, what a great opportunity to not only do that for her, but also to share with you just some even like really important concepts around how we are able to maintain our balance. And let's start here. It's important to know that balance is a process that involves three systems. The first one is your visual system. So we take in a lot of visual information from the environment that goes into our brain and informs where we are in space, right? The other system is our proprioceptive or somatosensory system. So this is the information that we're getting from our soft tissues, like our muscles, our tendons, our ligaments, our fascia, our joint surfaces. All of this information is also coming into our brain and nervous system and combining with our vision. So these two systems sort of check against each other. But the most important system that really is the sort of master standard is the vestibular system. This is our inner ear. The vestibular system is a series of three semicircular canals oriented in different angles with fluid. And it's a really cool looking system if you want to look it up. But essentially it gives us sort of another form of information based on where our head is, and based on what that system is experiencing. The other two systems, vision and the information from our body, are sort of checking against that system for consistency. And if they all agree, then we feel good. And if they don't agree, then we get dizziness or vertigo or things like that. So I'm not going to go into detail about those problems. What I want to talk about, though, is the other two systems that we actually have the ability to work with directly on a day-to-day basis. So first, it's important to know that we're very visual, and we rely on our vision to maintain our balance. That's sort of our dominant system. And what you'll find if you close your eyes or distract your vision in some way, because you're playing a ball sport or you're skiing or you're walking and focusing on the terrain, if your vision's distracted, you shift into relying more on your tissues and where your body is in space as your sort of second reference point to check against your vestibular system. So when we have the ability to focus our vision and focus our gaze, let's say, on something, our balance tends to be better. The more we distract our vision and take it away, the more challenging it is. And so we can use that as a way to work on our vision so that when we're out in the world doing things where we're not looking at the curb, we're not looking at the sidewalk, we have the ability to sort of strengthen this backup system that's so important. The other thing that I want to talk about is your feet, because your feet are your interaction with the earth, with the ground. And so from a information with regard to balance perspective, we're getting a lot of this through our feet. And most of us wear shoes. A lot of us wear really stiff shoes or really cushiony shoes. And so our feet aren't used to getting information from the ground the way we would if we were barefoot. So I really like to encourage people to spend time barefoot whenever they can, and especially when they're working on balance stuff, to spend some of that time without shoes. Not to say there's not value in working on your balance with shoes, because you do want to, if you're wearing a really foamy shoe like a Hoka, you do want to have some practice sort of getting a sense for where you are in space through the foam, I guess is probably the best way to say it. But to prepare yourself to have the best, or I say the smartest, most sensitive, most information-rich information from your feet, it really pays to work on your feet in a variety of ways. And that can look like using a golf ball or a spiky ball to sort of roll on the bottom to give your feet input from the environment. It could be wearing toe spacers so that you're working on splaying your toes and getting your feet out of this sort of narrow position that we tend to end up in a lot of shoes. So the more you are able to splay your toes and spread your feet and make the forefoot wider, the more of a sort of wide, broad base of support you have for balance. And this is why a lot of people sort of walk toed out like this, especially as they get older, because they want that sort of wider base of support. So we want to get that by making our feet and our toes as able to splay as we possibly can. And from a neuroscience perspective, the other reason this is so important is because our brain has a map of our whole body. It has sort of like a representation of our whole body. And oftentimes we lose clarity. That part of the brain that relates to the foot and how the brain sees the foot gets blurry because we're in shoes so much. And because we're not exposing our feet to a lot of interesting things and giving them a lot of input. So by playing with them and by exposing them to different surfaces, we're giving our brain a lot of information and clarifying the brain's representation of that part of the body, which is really helpful, because then if we catch our toe or if we step on something sharp, we feel that really quickly and we're able to react to that much more quickly than if we deprive our brain of this rich information from the environment. The last thing I'll say before we dive in and talk about strategies is that balance is not fixed. Your ability to balance can improve very quickly. Sometimes it improves within minutes. And this is how neuroplastic our brain and nervous system are. Once we start to expose it to new things, balance, unlike strength and some other metrics in cardiovascular fitness, balance can improve within seconds, minutes, and especially within weeks. So it's really fun to work on because you'll find that you make a lot of quick progress. So let's start from the very basics with how I test balance in a lot of my clients. And a lot of this I start doing with eyes open so that people are getting that visual feedback. Then I progress to some sort of distraction, which might be juggling, or throwing a ball with someone, or bouncing a ball on the ground, or throwing it against the wall. The other way we can distract is by having a conversation with someone, watching television, listening to music and moving a little bit, moving your head side to side or up and down. Gives your visual system a distraction that makes you, again, rely on this somatosensory information from your body to strengthen that system, so you have that as a reference when your vision is distracted. So step one, depending on where you're starting, if you can have your feet close together, like right next to each other, and narrow your base of support, that's going to give you a sense for maybe where to start. For some people, they already have a lot of sway, and this is really difficult. If you can then close your eyes, you might find that you have more sway. If that's too hard, then you might try doing some stuff with your head. And you kind of get the idea. You can grade this. Eyes open, distracting your vision by doing different things, juggling, and then closing your eyes. And then the other thing we can throw in here is some type of soft or unstable surface, like on your bed or on a carpet or on a pillow, and we'll talk about that a little bit. If you can do that easily, then you're going to go to what we call a tightrope stance, where one foot is directly in front of the other. And again, you're going to try to find your balance there with your eyes open, distract yourself by turning your head different directions. If you can do that, close your eyes. And then if you want to add an unstable surface and go back to the head movements, go back to eyes open, head movements, and then eyes closed. And then of course you want to switch sides and check the other side, because often there's a difference between the two sides. And sometimes, that's where you start. Then we can go to one foot. You're balancing on one leg, a little bit of bend in your knee. Again, you're going to go through the steps, starting on a hard floor, eyes open, moving your head, distraction, juggling, throwing a ball, whatever, and then closing your eyes. Adding soft surfaces is a way to progress that. And then you'll try the other side, of course, just to compare. It's always interesting to see how the other side does. And then the next thing would be to add a little bit of a squat. So I'm reaching back with my other leg, sort of to simulate a running stance or a hiking stance. And you might see how that goes. Again, go through the progression, check the other side, see how it's going. And what's cool about these tests is a lot of them turn into treatment strategies. So you're basically using the test as a way to start working on your balance and treating it at whatever level you feel like you're starting at. Now, once you've mastered these more static positions and variations, then you can make it a little bit more dynamic. You can add walking on a tightrope, which is in this case a virtual tightrope, right? You can make the steps as big as you want. I'm just using the lines on my floor as my tightrope. You can look at the ground to start if that's challenging. You can look ahead, you can start using distractions again, and then you can eventually close your eyes. If you have some type of a pole or something that you can walk on to simulate a very low balance, sort of real tightrope feeling, you can do that. Some people use slack lines. I sometimes even go to a hand railing at the school down the street that's not too high off the ground, and I practice walking on a tightrope on there. That's really fun. And then the next step would be to add in a little bit of a hop. So we can hop in multiple directions. You can jump forward, land, right? Get your balance. Jump back, land, get your balance. See, I'm having a hard time with this today, right? And then we can start adding diagonal jumps. We can jump sideways, back and forth. Again, trying to balance on one foot as you do that. And mixing and matching. Again, eyes open, vision distracted, doing some other task, eyes closed, soft surfaces. You can do this on a trampoline, which I'll sometimes do in my yard just to make it a little bit more challenging. You could do it on your bed if your bed's strong enough. But this would be like a quadrant jump. I'm diagonal forward, I'm sideways, I'm back, and then I'm sideways again. And then I can go back in the other direction. Every spot I'm stopping and I'm pausing to establish my balance before I jump. And then if I close my eyes, you'll see I have even an extra challenge because now I'm relying on my tissues to tell me where I am in space. And that's obviously quite a bit harder. The one thing I want to say at this point is intention is really important. So when you're starting to get on one leg and you're balancing, what you're focusing on can make a really big difference. So there are a couple of things I like to talk to people about. One is I like the foot to be a tripod, and that means the big toe, the little toe, and the heel are sort of this triangle that you're relying on to get balance, to establish a base of support. And if you can focus your brain on big toe, little toe, heel, you're going to find that you have better perception of the ground and better balance. The other thing I like to encourage people to do is focus on maintaining more of a neutral foot, maintaining more of a neutral arch. So instead of it being collapsed, I like people to think about lifting up the midfoot to this position so that the big toe is still on the ground, but we have some integrity to the foot. What that does, you can see, is if my foot collapses in, my knee caves, right? It's going to make me less stable, less balanced. If I bring my arch up higher and I focus with my intention on keeping my knee lateral to my foot out here, then I'm a lot more stable, my balance is a little better. So establishing that feeling in your foot when you're on the ground, especially when you have no shoes, establishing the knee position as a habit is really helpful. The last thing I like to help people focus on when they're on one leg is to maintain really level hips. So I'm not dropping, I'm not leaning the opposite direction, getting all crooked, right? Trying to balance like this. I'm in this really functional, strong, stable position, which surprisingly to people makes their lower leg and foot very tired, and the butt they're standing on super tired. So my hips are level, my spine is vertical, I'm not leaning or twisting or getting contorted at this point. Now, there is some value if you're doing more active sports in adding complexity, like reaching to the ground, right? Here, reaching to the ground here with my hand, reaching up for things, looking up for things, right? And then even reaching my leg around to different points around a circle. And I can even look at my foot as a way to add some visual distraction as I reach around the circle. So you can see you can get as creative as you want with this stuff. If we're talking about soft surfaces, this is a Bosu ball with the wrong side up, but I like standing on the wrong side up because it really challenges my foot and ankle. And then I can add my other variations, including going to eyes closed, if you're safe and you feel like you can get to the point where you're that advanced. That's great. I want to say that you can always have like one finger on something, a wall or a table, or have a pole, just in case, just to be a little bit safe. It's amazing when you add even one finger on a surface, how much information that gives to your brain and nervous system to make your balance feel a little more stable. So the Bosu ball is a good one. Balance pads that are filled with air sometimes are really fun to work with, and sometimes you can even make circles with your foot purposefully to go around like this, right? And you can see I'm getting a little contorted, but I want you to know that a lot of the value in balance is not being perfectly balanced. A lot of the value is actually in you feeling like you're going to fall and then correcting yourself. This is how your brain learns that, okay, next time I find myself falling in this position, I know what to do to correct that. If I catch my foot, I know what I do. I know what I need to do because I'm falling to stop myself. And of course, falling is its own skill that is sometimes helpful to practice. And I'm not going to go into that today, unless I fall off this thing, but you get the idea. Now, balance boards are another option. So I'm on the wrong side of a Bosu ball, but there are plenty of round and square balance boards that allow you to be on 2 feet balancing, with your feet in tightrope position, your feet next to each other, your feet wide, and all different variations. I can squat on this thing, right, and try to stabilize it, which is kind of fun. Unstable surface, right? I can make it go in circles, so I can get used to this weight shifting in different directions. And then, if I'd thought ahead, I can grab my juggling balls, and then I can distract my vision, which then requires me to really rely on my joints to balance. And you can see how much harder this is for me when my vision is distracted, for me to maintain stability, something I could work on. Now, there's room to even take this to another level, but I want this to be sort of just a good starting point for you to start to understand the basic concepts that you can then take and apply to any type of balance challenge that you want. Even going as far as jumping up onto something and landing on an unstable surface, jumping off something and landing on an unstable surface, jumping onto one leg and landing on an unstable surface and forcing yourself to get balanced. Sometimes when I'm at the beach, I even mess around with my balance in the ocean while I'm standing in the sand with the waves hitting me. So the concepts that I started with are really the most important part. And take those and run with them and really have a lot of fun with them, especially the part about distracting your vision and taking your vision away. This is one of the most surprising things to people when I see them in the clinic, is that they can't believe how hard it is when they're not getting this visual feedback that's so dominant, that we rely on so much. And you can imagine when you go out into the world and your vision is massively distracted because there's so much going on, including maybe even your phone as you're walking down the street, you need to strengthen this system of information that's coming from your body, from all of your tissues, so that it's not a surprise when something happens that you don't see in your visual field. Hey, thank you all for watching. I hope you get a lot of benefit out of this rapid fire content. Take a second to subscribe. Click the notification bell, because sometimes I get these random requests and I get a wild hair and just decide to make a whole video on some big idea. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you took away, what you found most helpful. If I kept you from falling and hitting your head or hurting yourself, I would love to know that. Thanks to my mom for being the inspiration for this video. Thanks, Mom, I love you, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.